let's get started. It's a little bit harder to read.
Thank you. Thought I got quiet. Okay. Stay. Okay. So how's that? All right. I'll keep talking until we get it all adjusted right. This week, continuing our study of lesser-known people, Miss Joan gave me a really awesome idea of a guy named Gehazi. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna have to put this thing on me. There we go. It'll stay in my pocket along with my cell phone and my pocket knife and everything else. Maybe I'll quit knocking the wire then. But I confess I am not prepared as well as I want to be for this guy named Gehazi. But we read about him in 2 Kings chapter 4. That's where we first get a mention of him there. 2 Kings chapter 4, starting around verse 8. Okay, first of all, who's heard of Gehazi? I'll put my arm down. I've read about him, but I briefly skimmed over his story there. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8. And we're going to read all the way down through verse 37 here. 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 47. 2 Kings chapter 4, starting in verse 8 through 37. Now it happened that one day Elisha went to Shunem, where there was a notable woman, and she persuaded him to eat some food. So it was, as often as he passed by, he would turn there to eat some food. And she said to her husband, "Look now, I know that this is a holy man of God who passes by us regularly. Please let us make a small upper room for him on the wall, and let us put a bed in for him there, and a table and a chair and a lampstand, so it will be whenever he comes to see us, he can turn in there." And it happened one day that he came there, and he turned into the upper room and lay down there. Then he said to Gehazi, his servant, "Call this Shunammite woman." Shunammite, thank you. When he had called her, she stood before him, and he said to her, "Say now to her, look, you have been concerned for us for all this care. What can I do for you? Do you want me to speak on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army?" She answered, "I dwell among my own people." So he said, "What then is there to be done for her?" And Gehazi answered, "Actually, she has no son, and her husband is old." So he said, "Call her." When he had called her, she stood in the doorway. Then he said, "About this time next year you shall embrace a son." And she said, "No, my lord. Man of God, do not lie to your maidservant." But the woman conceived and bore a son, and when the appointed time had come, of which Elisha had told her. And the child grew. Now it happened as one of these days that as he went out to his father, to the reapers, and he said to his father, my head. So he said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." When she had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon and then died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, shut the door upon him, and went out. Then she called to her husband and said, "Please send me one of the young men and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and come back." So he said, "Why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath." And she said, "It is well." Then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, "Drive and go forward, and do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you." So she departed and went to the man of God at Mount Carmel. So it was, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to his servant Gehazi, there he is again, "Look, the Shunammite woman. Please run to meet her and say to her, 'Is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the child?' And she answered, 'It is well.' Now when she came to the man of God at the hill, she caught him by the feet, but Gehazi came near to push her away. But the man of God said to her, 'Let her alone, for her soul is deep in distress, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me.' So she said, 'Did I ask a son of my Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me?' Then he said to Gehazi, 'Get yourself ready and take my staff in your hand and be on your way. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not answer him. But lay my staff on the face of the child.' And the mother of the child said, 'As the Lord lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you.' So he arose and followed her. Now Gehazi went on ahead of them, and laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Therefore he went back to meet him and told him, saying, The child has not awakened. When Elisha came to the house, there was the child laying dead on his bed. So he went in, therefore, shut the door behind the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. And he went up and lay on the child, and put his mouth on his mouth, and his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And he stretched himself on the child, and the flesh of the child became warm. He returned and walked back and forth in the house, and again went up and stretched himself out on him. Then the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, Call the Shunammite woman. So he called her. And when she came in to him, he said, Pick up your son. So she went in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground. Then she picked up her son and went out. And Elisha returned to Gilgal, and there was a famine in the land. We'll stop there at verse 37. Okay, so I went. That's the first story where we're going to read about this guy. That's a quick little refresher. It's a strange little story that we kind of skim over. I confess I haven't paid enough attention to this particular one, but we see a couple things here. One, he's a servant of Elisha, and when another interesting thing is, we're reading all of this in English, right? So we see where Elisha speaks in English for us, but he's saying to Gehazi, tell her this, and we read that also in English. So that tells me that likely Gehazi is also being a translator. He's acting as a translator from language A to language B. I couldn't even guess which ones that might be. Interesting little fact there. One of the other things that I saw is that Gehazi here, okay, I don't know why the kid, the little boy, had whatever his issue was, where he said, my head, maybe it was, I don't know. Was it something internal that he had? Was something hit him in the head? We don't know. Scriptures don't say. But something was wrong with his head, and it was bad enough where he died. And so the mom, we see, she's in a hurry. She's like, we're going to go get this thing. We need to go see Elisha. He can help us out. And she said to her servant, don't slow down unless I tell you. Just keep going. And so anyway, they get all the way there, and Elisha sees her and says, hey, Gehazi, go get her and ask her if everything's good. So then she comes up and meets Gehazi, and he says, hey, is everything going good? And she said, yeah, we're doing good. Well, her son's just died. Things are not good, right? So it's as if she's saying that, thank you, Gehazi, but we don't have time for formal greetings. I'll just say, okay, we're doing good, but I really need to talk to Elisha. So she's on her way to go see him, right? And then so when she gets all the way there to him, it's I don't know if she's maybe seeing something in Gehazi. It's like, I don't fully trust you with all this information. We just need to go straight to Elijah. Or what. But anyway, the point is she went straight to him, and then she falls flat on her face and trying to reach for his feet, and Gehazi stops her, and he said, and so that's the first time where Elisha has to correct him and say, no. She's here for a reason, and her heart's hurting her, and I can't speak to her directly. Maybe I can't speak with her directly because of this language barrier. But she's hurting. Something's going on. And so, anyway, his second failure there, his first failure is that we're trying to keep her away from the prophet here. Second one is where Elisha says, go heal this boy. But he didn't do it. Okay, remember who Elisha was. Who was Elisha's teacher? Elijah, right? So Elijah, he said, when they're walking there, they know that Elijah's about to go away. and Elijah knows it. And so Elisha asked him, give me a double portion of your spirit. And even Elijah was hesitant for that. Elisha had a very willing heart. He had been tested. And even his master there, Elijah, was hesitant about giving him all this stuff. But he had passed the test, and he wanted to do right. He wanted to serve. So now you've got Elisha is the master, for lack of better words, and then his servant coming up. One would think that we would want to pass these things on. And so he would be passing it on to his servant, Gehazi. But Gehazi's heart wasn't set in the right spot. Brother Ed, looks like you might have something here.
Well, I wonder, it's interesting because at the start of chapter 4 there,
Mm-hmm.
that there's an interaction between a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophet crying out to Elisha. So they have this dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and so, he asked about her, what can I do for you, all of that, and so she did what he said, and then we'll move down to verse 7, and then she came and told the man of God, go sell the oil, pay your debt, and you and your sons can live on the rest. And then the next thing we know is that here's another woman, a prominent woman,
Mm-hmm.
as it said here in verse 8, and that she says, behold, I perceive that this is a holy man of God passing by us continually. So I'm wondering, I don't know the geography, I haven't this either, between where first of chapter 4 to where down here when he passes over to Shunem in verse 8, but just wonder, is there any kind of connection between these two? Did the second lady here hear about Elisha from this earlier account?
Could be. And
She said, it says that she said, I perceive that this is a holy man of God. And I wonder if maybe she had some kind of knowledge of what had transpired, just in the earlier verses.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and another curiosity is that there's so much mentioned about this woman and the woman before. And honestly, I never thought that it might have been two women, but it apparently is. She's not named. A lot of people, when you have a lot written about them, they're named, but this person, this Shunammite woman, is not. Just a curiosity there. But yeah, with the child hurt and then died, Gehazi is given orders, go heal him, go lay this rod on him, and he's going to wake up. And it didn't happen. So there's a whole lot more in that whole interaction that I'm curious about. But thing is, he apparently failed at this test too. He did not have the spirit. Maybe. Okay, so just because you have, we'll say Elisha had a great teacher, Elijah, right? And he received a lot of spirit. He had a double portion of Elijah's spirit. But just because you may be a great teacher doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have great students. Who can think of another case like this in the Bible? More specifically, New Testament. Jesus and Judas. Very good. Yes. So Jesus had the 12, and Judas fell away. And even Jesus, or Jesus even prayed that. He says, "Look, thank you, Father, for these 12. I've lost none of them. Or thank you for those that you've given me. I've lost none of them, except the child of perdition, or the son of perdition." There, it's talking about Judas. So Judas was given everything, but had a greedy heart. Right? Gehazi here. We're going to read in the next big story about him. This is the one that's a little more memorable. Had a greedy heart. Well, let's go ahead, jump straight on that. 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 through 27. That's essentially the whole book, or chapter there. Anybody want to read for just a second? Or I can take it if not. Brother Wesley, go ahead.
Tell me a little bit of it. Chapter 5, verse 1. Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but a leper. And the Syrians had gone out on raids and had brought back captive a young girl from the land of Israel. She waited on Naaman's wife. Then she said to her mistress, "If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy." And Naaman went in and told his master, saying, "Thus and thus said the girl who is from the land of Israel." Then the king of Syria said, "Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. Then he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which said, "Now be advised, when this letter comes to you, that I have sent Naaman my servant to you, that you may heal him of his leprosy." And it happened when the king of Israel read the letter, that he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to kill and make alive? That this man sends a man to me to heal him of his leprosy? Therefore please consider and see how he seeks to quarrel with me." So it was when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had tore his clothes, and he sent to the king, saying, "Why have you torn your clothes? Please let him come to me, that he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." Then Naaman went with his horses and chariot, and he stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean." But Naaman became furious and went away and said, "Indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Can I not wash in them and be clean?" So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servants came near and spoke to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean?"
All right. Thank you, Brother Wesley. So we'll stop there for just a second. All right. It's a good stopping point. This is a good refresher for the whole story. Y'all remember this where Naaman, he's sick, captain of the Syrian army, and he's got some issues. He's leprosy. Bad. Right? Something I just now saw. Where Elisha is looking back at verse 8. When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent to the king, "Why have you torn your clothes?" Or saying, "Why have you torn your clothes? Please let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." So he's saying, "Okay, let him come to me." So now Naaman's heard this. He says, "Okay, I'm supposed to go to this guy," and so he goes there to him, looking for him. But then we'll pick back up. There around 14. Okay, so he says, "All right, yeah, oh, there he is. Yeah, he's coming in from way away. Gehazi, go tell him, go dip down in the River Jordan 7 times." It's kind of like saying, go dip in the Big Spring branch that runs through Redstone. Y'all ever seen that? It is nasty. It is really nasty. I've gone to do some cleanup stuff there when I had nothing better to do on a Saturday. Back when I was living in my apartment, it's before I got a garage and started working on cars on Saturdays. But man, there was so much trash and detritus that washed up through there through the floods, and it's just dirty. And I guess our mentality may be like, you want me to go get in that water? The Flint River is a lot prettier. The Tennessee is a lot prettier. Even the Aldrich Creek is prettier than this. But you want me to go dip in that? We know this story. It's like, why is this thing so simple? I mean, he should have come outside and at least waved at me or something. But he didn't do that. He just kind of looked over in my direction and walked back in his house. And now he wants me to go do this. But fortunately, his servants say, look, if it were something really, really big, would you do it? Yeah. So it's the same thing that we can try to teach people about the plan of salvation. It's simple. You don't have to do great and huge things. It's a simple plan because God loves us. It's just follow these steps and put on the Lord in baptism. It's simple. Don't think about it. Don't overthink it. It's simple. Naaman, would you not do this? And he said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll give it a try. And we know what happened there. It's picking back up around verse 14. So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and all of his aides, and came and stood before him, and he said, indeed, now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Now therefore, please take a gift from your servant. But he said, as the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will receive nothing. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. So Naaman said, then if not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth, for your servant will no longer offer either burnt offerings or sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. Yet in this thing may the Lord pardon your servant. When my master goes into the temple of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I will bow down in the temple of Rimmon. When I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord please pardon your servant for this thing. And he said to him, go in peace. So he departed from him a short distance. So he doesn't get too very far. And also what we read back in verse 8, when Elijah said to the king, please let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. Okay, so now he knows that there's a prophet in Israel, and now he also knows that there is no God except for the God in Israel. Okay. Verse 20. Well, verse 19. He didn't get very far away. And I don't know if there's a translation thing going on here as well, maybe. But anyway, he starts to head away, say, thank you, please let me pay you. Please let me, this has got to cost something. And Elijah says, essentially, this is free. No, I'm not going to take anything. Don't give me anything. I'm not going to take it. How much does salvation cost us? It's still free. It's simple, and that's what it's hard for the world to understand, especially now when everything costs so much. Period. Life, the cost of living is high. So when somebody gives us something for free, well, are we getting scammed? Or something is usually not right, because free stuff usually isn't free. Whenever you sign up for whatever free service out there, it's going to wind up costing you. They're going to feed you ads to go buy their stuff or something. But Naaman's cleansing was free. Our salvation today is free. Right? Anyway. Look like you might have something there.
Well, it is free. No doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a commitment.
Yes. There is.
When I accept a gift, there's terms that come with that.
Yes. There is a commitment. There is a cost. Right? And even Jesus says, no man putting his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God, right? So there is a cost. It's going to cost us our old ways. It's going to cost essentially a changing of our lives in order to be more like Christ, because we are His. We have been bought. It cost Him a lot. So now we are to fulfill that. Gehazi, though, he says, no, this dude's got a lot of money. We can get something about him. Surely something. Verse 20, let's read on. But Gehazi, the servant of Elijah, the man of God, said, look, my master has spared Naaman the Syrian while not receiving from his hands what he brought. But as the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. And we just read how much he brought, right? It was a lot of stuff that he brought with him. So Gehazi pursued Naaman. When Naaman saw him running after him, he got down from the chariot to meet him and said, is all well? And I can just see this situation here. Poor Naaman, he's clean. He's healed. It's like, wow. I mean, man, this used to burn so bad when I did this, but I've got this. It doesn't hurt anymore. I can be around people. I can be like within close proximity of people. This finger that had fallen off is back. I'm cleansed. He's still processing this, right? There's a lot of stuff going through his head. And then he sees this guy, this servant that he had just seen with Elijah, run up to him and say, hey, what's going on? You gonna need something? He's still on cloud 9. And Gehazi here says, verse 22, all is well. My master has sent me, saying, indeed, just now, 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the mountains of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. Okay? So what are you going to do? If you're on cloud 9 after getting healed from whatever, I know what I would do. I would say exactly what Naaman said. Verse 23, so Naaman said, please take 2 talents. And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags and with 2 changes of garments. And they handed him to his servants, to 2 of his servants. And they carried them on ahead of him. I would have done the same thing, being in such a elated position. It was like, well, this is stuff I don't have to take back with me, and man, I still feel good. I felt like I needed to pay something. I'm going to pay this guy. Well, he doesn't know he's getting scammed, totally getting scammed by Gehazi here. Verse 24, when he came to the citadel, he took them from their hand and stored them away in the house, and he let the men go, and they departed. Now he went in and stood before his master. Elisha said to him, where'd you go, Gehazi? And he said, your servant did not go anywhere. Then he said to him, did not my heart go with you when the man turned back from his chariot to meet you? Is it time to receive money and to receive clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male and female servants? Therefore the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and your descendants forever. And he went out from his presence leprous, as white as snow. When he went and got this stuff, he hid it, essentially. And he says, your servants, y'all go away. It could have been he bribed them. He may have given some of this 2 talents of silver and these changes of clothing. He says, all right, you boys, appreciate your help. Y'all take this stuff and y'all go away and don't come back. Because it says, I just lost my place here. Wrong page. When it says that, and they departed. That tells me that they went away and probably didn't come back. But Elisha knows what's going on because he's got the double spirit of Elijah. We know the great things that he did. He's reading this guy's heart. So there's a very interesting contrast between Naaman, the commander of the Syrian army, and this guy Gehazi, who's working as a servant directly up underneath essentially the prophet in all of Israel, the great prophet. Naaman, he has very little knowledge of God, right? He doesn't know much about him. Because he's essentially a pagan, talking about or going into the temple of Rimmon. You're talking about when he's going to go there and pray, or go there and worship. On the other hand, you got Gehazi, who's working right here with Elisha and knowing a lot about God, right? So he's got a lot of stuff. Naaman had a very ungodly heritage because where he came from. Well, Gehazi he's an Israelite, right? So he's godly. He's got the good heritage. Naaman, he had a very ungodly job. He's a captain of the army. His job is to kill people, right? That's not a very nice thing. But Gehazi's was a godly job. He was to help heal people as Elisha's servant, or to help do godly things. Right. Number 4, Naaman had more faith than most of Israel, but Gehazi had apparently less faith than all of Israel. And anyway, Naaman, we read about his story. We know his story a lot, and his actions demonstrated his faith. There's a whole sermon in just that one little thing there. But Gehazi's, his actions demonstrated his lack of faith. Naaman didn't know a whole lot about God, but what he did know, he believed with all of his heart there and applied it. Gehazi knew a whole lot about God, but had no faith in the things that he did know. So we have to be careful about who we're more like there. Looks like you got something there on your mind again. You got that look, Brother Ed. Yeah.
I was thinking about, you mentioned earlier about Jesus and Judas.
Mm-hmm.
Judas had an insider look.
Mm-hmm.
He had spent all of that time, as the other disciples and apostles did, with Jesus, and so yet, even though he should have known better, Satan still got to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an opportunity to repent.
Yeah.
He could have repented, and Jesus would have forgiven him. But he chose to go out and commit suicide.
Yeah.
So he paid the penalty for the consequence for his sin, and where Gehazi paid the consequence for his sin. Like that, he knew enough of the man of God, his godly character, but yet chose his own selfish ambition. And even though we don't see the words here, Satan is right there.
Yeah. Yeah, Satan's right there. There's the parallels between Gehazi and Judas are pretty straight. There's a lot of similar things there because Gehazi is greedy, Judas greedy. We can, just like you said, Satan, we read, it's written in the scriptures where Satan entered Judas's heart. We don't explicitly read that here, but we can tell that Gehazi was driven by his greed here. We got just enough time to quickly get into this. Who knows the story, what goes on there in 2 Kings chapter 6? Just quickly go over there. Elisha and the Syrians, where they're essentially, I'll try to synopsize this thing in just a minute. You got a whole bunch of the Syrians there, and then they all fled, and they left everything, right? And then so you've got the Israelites there that are inside the city. They don't know that they've all fled, but you got 4 leprous men that run out there, and they start pilfering through all this stuff. Well, the lepers had to live outside the city, right? So they're already out there, and they're like, hey, look, the Syrians are gone. So they start going through and pilfering their stuff. Gehazi was now leprous, with skin as white as snow, right? Could it be that he's one of these guys, one of these 4 lepers? Because we know what his heart was there with the incident with Naaman. He's greedy. He wants to get some stuff. Well, now the the Syrians are gone, and these lepers come out there and they start pilfering through their stuff. Could be the same guy. And I confess, I did not go over as much of this stuff in depth as I wanted to. I got a whole bunch of excuses, but none of them are any better than the other. Anyway, that's an interesting study if Naaman may have been one of these guys. That's what I got. Appreciate the Gehazi may have been one of these guys. Thank you, Miss Jones, for this guy. I apologize I didn't do better, but who's next? Think about it. Let me know. All right. Appreciate it, y'all. Turn this over to Brother Wesley.
As everybody gets very, very quiet. Oh, hi. Good evening. Good evening. I got a bunch of paper here, so let me get through it. Oh, this is Sunday's preacher. But that's at the top of the pile because Friday night we're hosting the area-wide singing here at Farley. Come, sing. If you have fingers, bring some finger foods. And you can meet Chandler Francis. He's also speaking Sunday. And would love to be your preacher here at Farley. So looking forward to meeting him and his wife. And he's got a 1-year-old. So, you know, Kenny, 1-year-olds are just totally cute. So, you know, that's got to be awesome. Okay, next in my pile is Ed's spreadsheet. We got a work day Saturday. If you have 2 hands and 1 nose, come be with us 8 o'clock Saturday morning, and you'll get put to work. And if you can spare an hour or 3, that'd be awesome. And then tonight's devotional. 589 is going to be our song of invitation if you're a paper book kind of guy, but it'll be on the screen. Attended the funeral of Sister Coram this morning, and you know, you how do you sum up 100 years of awesomeness in 5 minutes next to a grave? Man, there's just something to be said for living a righteous life and just being that kind of an example before others. Beautiful day to be out, seeing the dogwoods blooming and thinking on a life well spent like that. And I got to thinking, what could I possibly say that would kind of bounce off that tonight? Well, the reason Sister Corum's life was so awesome is she lived her life by this book. So tonight we're going to talk about 4 totally cool things about this little book. And I've got a sermon that I'm going to try to get through in about 5 minutes. So I'm not going to do all these scriptures, but if you want them, I could share them with you. 4 facts about the Bible. Number 1, the Bible is the only book from the mind of God. You want to know what God's thinking? Read this book. What is God thinking? You know, all those things that come to mind. Peace, mercy, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. All that stuff is from the mind of God. Or Christopher or somebody. Number 2, the Bible is the only book that comes from the heart of God. You want to know how God feels about you? You might read about that in John. For God so loved the world that He sent Jesus. And Jesus said, I love you this much. And He died for you. For you. If I was the only sinner on earth, Jesus would have died for me. That's the heart of God. So this little book tells me about what's on God's mind, what's in God's heart. Number 3, the Bible is the only book that tells us all things we must know, believe, and do to get to heaven. I love to say it in the teen class. 143 years from now, guess what? You young people who are going to live forever, you're all going to be dead. And you're going to be somewhere. Where do you want to be in eternity? I want to get to heaven. This is your instruction book to get there. Are you reading the instructions? And number 4, the Bible is the only book by which humans will be judged. Do you like being judged? If you drive 51 on the parkway, you're speeding. You know, there's rules about everything. Everything, everywhere we go. And some of them are real important, and some of them are maybe not so important. Robert has seen me do electrical, and he knows how I feel about the electrical code. And some of those rules, I'm like, nah, that's for somebody else. But one of these days, we're going to be judged by this book, and it's going to be suddenly really important that we've done what we ought to do, and we've lived in a way that would be pleasing to God. So as I think on Sister Coram and others who have gone before me and who have lived just wonderful lives, I want to live a life like that, where when I'm dead and gone, people are going to say, Wesley studied the Word of God and tried his best to live by the Word of God. Spend a little more time in this book this week. You'll be glad you did. Brother Sean's going to lead us in an invitation song. If you have any need, please do come as we stand and sing.